Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome to this edition of Access to Democracy. I'm your guest host today, Steve Francisco. It's a real pleasure to have on our set today the mayor of the city of Eagan, His Honor Mayor Mike Maguire. Welcome, Mike.
Steve, thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You know, it's hard to believe, but there may actually be some people watching our show who aren't familiar with you, even though you've been mayor of the city now for coming up on 8 years.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
Sure. You know, I grew up on the East Coast, just outside of Boston, so I'm a lifelong Red Sox fan. I came out to Minnesota in 1989 to go to Mankato State, and I got my master's degree at Mankato State. And I fell in love with the state of Minnesota, and I also met a girl who I ended up, after I went down to Indiana for a few years and pursued my doctorate degree. I came back and I married Janelle, and we moved to Eagan shortly after we were married, and we've been here for 19 years and remain married and love each other in this community.
That's great. Tell us about some of your prior service. Before you were mayor of Eagan,
Sure, yeah.
You've served on the Eagan City Council.
I was. In 2002, I ran for the Eagan City Council. It was my first time running for election, and our son Ian was actually born about a month before the primary in that election. So Ian's always been around a family who's been serving in the community, and I was fortunate enough to be elected to the City Council. Served in the City Council for 4 years, and then in 2006, Mayor Eagan decided not to run for a second term, so I ran for mayor then. And I was honored to be elected mayor, and I've been working with a great city council ever since then. I was reelected in 2010, and here we're back in 2014 now, and I've asked to re-up. It's been really an honor to serve the citizens of Eagan. I'm excited about the things that we've done as a city council team. I'm prepared for the challenges that we face, and I'm excited for the opportunities that Eagan has ahead, too.
Mm-hmm. And you said something to me that I found very interesting before the show began. Even though you're unopposed, you never take running for office for granted.
No, you know,
and you still ask people for their vote.
I do.
Ask for their support.
You know, I think that's important. I look, Steve, and we talked about it. I look at campaigns and elections as an important opportunity for community dialogue. And for me, every time I've run for re-election or run from city council for mayor, I've wanted feedback on how we're doing, and I've wanted to know what citizens think about where the city is, what things they'd like to see changed, or what things they just don't understand as much as they'd like to. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's just because I'm unopposed, I don't think it means that I want to be outside of that dialogue. And you know, I've told a number of people, you know, I'm honored to be unopposed. I think it greatly improves my chances of winning. But I still think it's important to go to people and talk about your accomplishments, talk about your vision, talk about issues, and ask to be allowed to continue to serve the community. So that's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some basic facts about the city of Eagan for some of our viewers who may not know some of this information. Sure. What's our population right now?
Well, at give take about 67,000 people. We in the last census we moved down the list of the largest cities in the state of Minnesota. We are now the 9th largest city.
We used to be 7th, 6th, or 7th?
Yeah,
Eighth.
so we just moved
So
down a
we're
little
down
bit.
9,
But
okay.
Yep. And I should know who passed us up, but we'll get them, I'm sure.
And what is the number of city employees working for Eagan right now?
You know, and again, it's a give or take number, but it's been pretty stable around 200, 205 full-time employees for really as long as I've been on the council. You know, we had a slight dip in the number of employees when the state was going through some significant fiscal issues, and they didn't make due on some debts iota, so we had to make a budget, a staff adjustment. But you know, right now we're back at about that same 203 or 4, I think, FTE. You know,
we have
these are budget numbers that just came up, and I
Right.
should know them more offhand.
That's all right, but just to
yeah.
give people a sense of what we have, number of people working for the city.
Yeah.
And some seasonal employees too, right?
Yeah, you know, I was just in employee recognition yesterday, and I should have remembered this number as well. But I think it's in the neighborhood of about 100 and maybe 50 seasonal employees, and that's, you know, lifeguards at Cascade Bay. It's part-time folks who do the skate schools or do, you know, we have some preschools and things like that. So a pretty good and really quality staff on both the part-time and the seasonal side, as well as our full-time staff couldn't be better.
What is our annual budget for this city of give or take 67,000 people?
Well, you know, the general fund is the general fund budget, I think, is in the neighborhood of about $28 million in an operating fund. And then when you add our enterprise funds, which are kind of mini enterprises or projects in and of themselves, are supposed to be self-sustaining by the fees they collect. You know, the total budget runs in the neighborhood of about $45 million.
Okay, so that 45 million, if you want to look at that bigger figure, if you were to take $1 of that and break it down for me, where does that money go? How is it spent by the city?
Well, you know, we
Roughly.
Yeah. Every year we put out, I think, a really solid graphic on where the services are in terms of our department. The lion's share of our budget, I think, somewhere around 40%. Goes to paying our police officers, and that's we have about 85 or maybe 65 sworn officers,
right.
and then some additional administrative costs there, and that's probably about 40% of our budget, and a significant portion of our employees as well. I think when you go from there to maybe about around 10% for administrative costs. That's the cost of financing and accounting and overseeing the taxpayers' dollars, as well as our utilities billing and things like that. You might go probably about 15% for public works and road construction. I'd say probably in the neighborhood of 7 or 8% for parks and things like that. You know, an increasing percentage is gonna have to go to fire protection. We're having to make some changes in the way we pay for fire protection and kind of have a hybrid between the volunteers. So that's going to become a little bit of a larger cost driver in our budget. And then there's community and economic development and just the cost of processing permits and inspections on new
Building
development
permits,
and
things
yeah,
such as that.
Exactly, yeah. So, and I'd say that's probably about 10% of it too. You know, these are rough numbers, and we're going through the truth and taxation hearings, and there'll be much more in front of me in those hearings, but readily available on the city's website.
That's what I was going to bring up, but citizens who are interested in learning more about how that tax dollar is spent can go to the city website, the information.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I'm really proud of with the city of Eagan is not only do we have a great reputation for our level of fiscal responsibility and strategic and prudent fiscal management, but we also have been recognized repeatedly for our level of budget transparency and our efforts to make sure that citizens, if they have questions about the budget, can ask them and get those answered. So, you know, not only do the mandated public hearings, you know, we just had a hearing, nobody attended it, of course, but we just had a hearing on our budget and our levy a few weeks ago, certified that budget and levy. We'll have a truth and taxation hearing in December where members of the public are encouraged to come in and look through the budget. All of the budget materials right now are on the city's website. We'll also do, we were recognized by the League of Minnesota Cities last year for an Innovation in Local Government Award because we did a Budget Connect virtual open house in the budget where we actually organized a cable show like this one and had people tweet us and email us and call us and for real-time answers to their questions about the budget. So we try to get that information out there as much as we can.
Transparent and accessible.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
that's the
there
goal.
was some good news that the city of Eagan received from Standard & Poor's
Indeed.
recently. Tell us a little bit about that. What happened with this? What is the status of Eagan's credit rating right now?
Well, you know, the status of Eagan's credit rating is top in the country. Eagan had already achieved a AAA bond rating from Moody's. We achieved that a couple of years ago. Our longtime Director of Finance, Gene Van Overbeck, he retired from a long and prosperous and helpful career as our budget director, still wanting to get that same rating from Standards & Poor's. We are very proud to be able to acknowledge
We should
that
explain to people,
just
too,
recently they did.
really what this means.
Yeah.
Doesn't it mean that if the city of Eagan needs to borrow and has to issue bonds, it means that the interest on that bonds, we get a more favorable interest rate, which is favorable to taxpayers.
What it means is that the full faith and credit of the city of Eagan means something. We are in the top 10% of governments nationwide for having this rating. It's not an easy rating to get.
Not just in Minnesota, but nationwide.
Yeah. And what it means is exactly what you said. Our investments in infrastructure are made more efficient by the fact that because the fiscal management leads to a significant faith in the credit and the ability of Eagan to manage its finances and repay its debts, that we actually get lower interest rates, which means that those investments, which are significant for the taxpayer of Eagan, come at a lower and a more efficient cost.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about economic development. I think you would have to be living under a rock not to know that this has been quite an extraordinary summer for the city of Eagan.
Indeed.
With the opening of the new Paragon Outlet Mall down on Highway 13.
Yeah.
Talk about the mall for a moment. What does this mean to the city of Eagan in terms of tax revenue, economic development, job creation?
Sure.
And beyond that, if you'd address real briefly, how do you see that neighborhood developing over the next 10, 20 years? What's it going to look like 10 to 20 years from now?
Well, you know, one of the things that I'm really excited about is the Cedar Grove redevelopment district in general, and then of course specifically the mall. And everybody is understandably excited about the mall. I can't go anywhere in Eagan or in the metro region, quite frankly, without somebody thanking me, congratulating me, or just telling me what a great time they had at the mall. So it's a significant impact on us as a community and how it puts us on the map in the region and across the country, and really, quite frankly, it has opportunities to bring folks from other countries in to shop here as well. But
so
your
they're
question
not
is more
just
on
going to a
finance.
Mall of America, they may be coming to the Paragon
Well,
Mall
we think there's
as
an
a
opportunity for them to
destination
do both.
To do both.
Yeah, you know, Mall of America is already a destination for shoppers. Shopping is one of the #1 recreational activities that people travel for. And we believe that this is a great extension onto a shopping trip for anybody who's coming into the area. It gives them a chance to come see Eagan too, and probably get a hotel room at a cheaper value. But we were asking about the redevelopment district, and so let me talk about the mall a little bit. You know, it's we've been engaged in redevelopment in Cedar Grove for upwards of 15 years. And just so your viewers understand, that's in what we call a tax increment finance district, where basically what happens is the city sets up boundaries around a district and says, we're going to make investments in this district, and we're going to use revenues from the district and from that come from the sale of property or from taxes on investments in it, and we're going to pour those back into that district to revitalize it. And so the tax impact for the general voter on either the cost side or the benefit side won't be felt for the general voter or the general taxpayer in Eagan until about the year 2030. But for right now, what's going on in that district is very exciting. The mall itself is a $100 million investment in the property value of that. So the taxes off of that from here going forward until 2013 will go into the fund that helps pay for things like a parking ramp, or infrastructure improvements that we've already done, or the land acquisitions that the city has already done to make that redevelopment possible. So that's the #1 exciting thing about it.
And Mike, is what you're saying, does this also mean that not only has the value of the land that the mall sits on increased dramatically, but the property values of the surrounding area are also increasing?
Absolutely, and that's part of the vision that the council has had for this last 16 years. I think the council's patience has paid off in getting this mall. You get a $100 million investment in a retail operation that is 5 miles south of the Mall of America. That drives additional investment and additional value out of the land. And so, for example, following the approval, I mean, the morning we broke ground on the mall being built, that night the council heard a vision, a concept plan for 190 or so apartment units, one of the first apartment developments to be built in Eagan in almost 20 years. That came with another 11,000 square feet of commercial development as well, additional retail, restaurant space to serve the mall and to add to an entertaining environment. We have a proposal for a hotel that's been approved now. That's a local group that runs the St. Paul Hotel.
Which is going to create more jobs.
Which is going to create even more jobs. You know, out of the mall, you have about 1,600 to 2,000 ongoing jobs. I think it was about 2,000 to 1,500 construction jobs in the mall. There are more construction jobs in the apartments that are being built right now. The ramp certainly created jobs as well.
The other thing I find interesting about this mall is its proximity to the transit center as well.
Indeed, yeah.
So that now you have a way for people from the Twin Cities metro area to access it. They don't have to have a car. You can use public transportation.
Right, yeah.
That'll drive additional traffic coming into the mall as well.
Yeah, you know, it's directly linked to the Mall of America, but you're absolutely right, to the larger metro as well. And as we see our transit system in the region built out, it's more opportunity for folks to be able to, quite frankly, move into the Cedar Grove. You know, beyond the apartments that have been approved. We just talked to Ryland about 50 new townhomes in the area. So there'll be opportunities, and you know, this transit-oriented development really goes back 15 years to the vision and the view of a village in that area. And you know, we didn't envision a village with a premium outlet mall and 100 stores. But we did envision the area to work the way it is right now, and that is to have transit, to be walkable, have high-intensity uses, and have really a different lifestyle option in the city of Eagan. It's the kind of lifestyle option that I think especially some of our most talented workers and entrepreneurs are going to want to have going forward. They're going to want to have opportunities, and you'll have them in the Cedar Grove, to live without a car, or not use it as much as you do today.
I want to ask you about that, continuing on this issue of economic development. You gave a speech in March of last year where you said that, quote, Eagan needs to develop a talent economy.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? And you just used that word a moment ago. What do you mean a talent economy?
Sure.
What does it look like?
You know, I think in today's world, the new normal isn't new. It's just normal now. And what's normal, I think, is that we are increasingly seeing that entrepreneurs and talent can move and work and be productive and be innovative from anywhere. And if cities, I would argue, are going to compete, as Eagan has, you know, we are a job leader in the metro area. We currently have 54,000 jobs in Eagan. It's the highest number ever, and that's post-recession. If we're going to continue to do that, if we're going to keep pace and continue to be competitive regionally and globally and attract businesses, we're going to have to build the kind of community that attracts those most talented people and the things that they want. Increasingly, the millennials, for example, who are really innovating in technology and in systems of management.
Well, that's the group that's creating a lot of the new small businesses that we see
yeah,
too.
and the entrepreneur class.
And not just high tech, but some service businesses too, new restaurants, new
Absolutely.
bookstores,
Yeah.
other ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
It's about maintaining your commitment to the basic infrastructure and the most vital things that we do as a city, but it's also recognizing that those soft values are important, that values in the connectedness of your community are important, that your investments in arts and culture are what truly attract talented people.
And you know,
it's
we're
the kind of
lucky.
lifestyle they
We're
want.
lucky in Eagan because we've been recognized not just in Minnesota but nationally, having some great assets here. The Capone Art Park,
Yeah.
which ultimately will end up being a city park someday,
Yeah.
as I understand it. I mean, these are tremendous assets to this community, and we tend to keep ranking
They
very
are.
highly on quality of life indicators.
You know, so much of it is about the ability to attract talent is your proximity and your connectedness with a diverse set of assets. They want connections to metropolitan entertainment. They also want connections to outdoor and open spaces. And we're wonderfully situated here in Eagan. We've been recognized consistently from Money Magazine as one of the best places in the country to live because of our combination of those things. What we need to do is continue to enhance them and make sure that when people think about Eagan, they might not be sure exactly what it is, but they know that something is going on there and they want to be a part of it. And that's what I hope we can do.
Let me ask you about economic development from a slightly different angle.
Sure.
I think all of us would agree it's a great thing to live in a relatively affluent community, good schools, good jobs, good roads, increasing property values. But could there be a little bit of a downside in terms of poverty too? That there has been some data in recent years that indicates that poverty is growing fastest, not in the core cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, but actually in suburban areas like Dakota County, where you do see homeless people. And my question to you would be this, Mike: should we be concerned that as property values continue to increase, that, for example, we have a sizable proportion of Eagan residents who rent?
Right.
As property values increase, are we going to see landlords raising rents to the point where people become displaced from renting?
Well, yeah, you know, it's I serve on the Regional Council of Mayors. I am the co-chair of their housing initiative, and I've been working on the Met Council's advisory group on their forthcoming housing plan as well. And the concerns you talk about are challenging nuts to crack, because housing is both a system and it's a market. And especially in a place like Eagan, where you do, fortunately, after the recession, this past year is the first year we've actually seen property values go on the increase again. They took a dip through the recession. That lags behind a little bit. But your concern is a valid one. The flip side of that concern is, and I'll come back to it, but the flip side of your concern is, one of the things we don't want to do, I think, is equate rental only with affordability, because the fact of the matter is there are some rental properties that are market rate, and they're not necessarily affordable, and it's not, just because something is rentable doesn't mean it's affordable to an income at 60% median.
There may actually be bigger macroeconomic issues here about what people are paid for work, and real wages declining, so affecting the ability of people to afford housing.
I mean, I think now, I do know from the data that we've looked at that here in Eagan, both in combination with the Community Development Agency and Mark Olfers, we've had some good workforce developments in this community that are affordable to families at about 60% of median. We could still use more, but we're actually serving that demand fairly well. One of the concerns is, and it's a harder nut to crack, is folks that are making that at 30% of median. I think we still have some niches that we have to find a way to get to either the private sector or the CDA to try to find and preserve housing for folks at that 30% median. And that's the one that I'm most worried about. There are about 150 or so individuals or families or households, I guess, that fall into that range and are housing burdened right now. And it's something that I hope that through state action and through local planning and sensitivity, we're able to address here in Eagan. But it's a challenge across the metro, and certainly.
Continuing question on housing. You were cited in a New York Times article about a year ago, September last year. New York Times did a story about rising property values, the very subject we're talking about. And you were quoted in the article dealing with the issue of 2 golf courses in Eagan that have been approved for high-use development, that they're going to have high-end homes built on these tracks. And you were quoted as saying, when there's no new development, you said there had been little housing development during the past few years, certainly because of the recession. That was a national phenomenon, not just unique to Eagan.
It was.
But you said when there's no new development, you have stock that's increasingly out of date and that tends to bring your home values down, you said at that time. So when we talk about that, are there other high-end developments that you see currently in the pipeline for Eagan? Because we're considered a pretty mature community.
We are.
There aren't lots of open tracts of land for development. Are there other things similar to what's happening at, was it Carriage Hills and the other Pinecrest?
Both Carriage, I will say Carriage Hills in particular, and I just drove by there this morning, and, and there's it's all, I prefer to talk about high quality development, not necessarily high end development, because, when we make decisions on the council, we're not really able to make distinctions based on what the ultimate sale price of a property might be.
But the expectation was that we're talking about homes that are higher than the average price of housing.
And we always want high quality homes. I will suggest that, if you go up along Carriage Hills, for example, right now, they're building what I assume to be some fairly moderately priced and consistent with the market townhomes on the north side of that lot. So the suggestion that all of it is high end might not be as right. I think on the Parkview development, it skews a little higher end. I think that there is some in the lower end, in the lower range. In terms of ongoing developments residentially, I think in the Cedar Flats, you'll see a mix of rents and styles available. I just approved the Blue Cross Blue Shield building for a conversion from office to
condos?
condominium. That's coming with some retail development. I think kind of almost a neighborhood revitalization in the area, but done entirely privately. And that'll be some higher end rental. I think. There's also some workforce CDA projects that have just gone in along Lexington, as well as additional by LeMay Lake, I believe, and down on Highway 13 as well. So I think we have
some other
the goal
things
is to have a
coming along.
diversity of housing,
Right.
And we have a diversity of housing, I think, on the horizon as well.
Good. Let me ask you real quickly about another issue, not directly an issue that affects you as mayor, but an issue that affects Eagan. In February this year, Dakota County Commissioners postponed adoption of a park master plan affecting the Lebanon Hills Park. The original controversy or proposal was to put in a 6.5-mile paved trail in the park, which engendered a lot of opposition from community people who said that they didn't feel their voices had been heard by the county commissioners. Do you have any thoughts on this controversy?
Well, you're right. This is really more in the court of the relationship between the county and its and
because the county will make the decision, but as mayor, do you have an opinion about that?
Well, I have an opinion on it from afar, and I think one of the things that I think that, and I think it's admirable that the Dakota County Commissioners heard the concerns of people in terms of being heard, and they accommodated that. And my understanding is there's now a dialogue in process. At the same time, I think it's important to make sure to step back on these kinds of decisions. I think we have a responsibility in government to make sure that all citizens have access not only to our ear, but also to our amenities. And I, from afar, I think it's important to understand that people have transportation needs and ADA and disabilities and things like that.
We want our parks to be accessible, too.
But we also want our parks to be accessible.
To preserve the character. It's a balancing issue.
It is. It's a balancing act. And, my understanding of the trails, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked at it in depth.
Yeah.
My understanding isn't that
We're
the trails
about to run out of time here.
Great.
I hate to
Just
cut
be
you
really
off, Mike,
quickly.
but thank you so much for being our guest on Access to Democracy. Come back and see us again, and we'll talk further.
Steve, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Mayor
Always
Mike
good to talk to you.
Maguire, thank you.
Thank you, sir.